I am back with part 1 of 2 of my reaction to Dougherty Dozen Bestie, This Mad Mama, and her now deleted TikTok response to a question, a very simple question in fact, about birth control, because it was a whole damn mess. Now, I've chosen to break this video into 2 because the full reaction, well, she was over 2 hours long, as I had decided to do a dramatic reading of her super crazy comments section. So even after editing that down, it was just still so long that I just decided, you know what, we're going to save the comment section dramatic reading for another video, which I'll upload soon, don't worry, so that we can actually just start getting into the meat of this. Both of these videos are also going to be a part of a much longer reaction series to This Mad Mama's other recently deleted TikToks about how she ended up having 12 biological children. Because it's also just, wow, yep, and then eventually all of just the other super concerning things that she does in her content, which frankly really makes the things that Alicia Dougherty does seem really not so bad and totally not intentional on Alicia's part, like at all, right, Alicia? I see you, girl. And I've got receipts for days to support my little theory, which we'll get to that eventually as well. But that's not why we're here today. So let's get into it, shall we?
If my children are adults, they don't need my permission to get on birth control. If my children are children, why are you even thinking about them having sex? Go on, why are you thinking about that? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? They're children. They can't give consent. In my state, age of consent is 17. Like, they can't get a tattoo. They can't buy a house. They can't buy a car. Or like, what business do they have doing adult activities when they're children? Now, listen, some parents may disagree and they may be like, you know what, 12, 13, 14, 15, that's old enough. That's fine. And you know what? Those parents can give their consent for their child to do the things that cause pregnancy, and they can get their child on birth control. But you know what? Birth control is not 100% effective, and it comes with major risks. And not just the risks everyone knows about, like weight gain, but it can also cause heart attack, stroke, blood clots, and the longer you're on it, your chance of getting cancer skyrockets. So why would I do that to a child who's not even engaging in reproductive activities? Like, that doesn't even make any sense. So no, I will not be getting my minor children on birth control. Like, that's ridiculous. There's no need for that.
Okay, let's rewind and start from the beginning, shall we?
If my children are adults, they don't need my permission to get on birth control.
Correct. And also incorrect. Your children absolutely do not need your permission to get birth control, period. The Reproductive Health Act in New York State gives minors access to birth control, abortion, and other reproductive health care services without consent from their parent or guardian. So you're wrong.
If my children are children, why are you even thinking about them having sex?
That is a deflection and a logical fallacy. You are trying to invalidate the commenter's question by reframing it as inappropriate because they're children. Even though everyone watching this knows exactly what they're talking about, which is essentially, how do you support your teen children if they become sexually active? It's not a difficult question, bestie.
Go on, why are you thinking about that? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? They're children.
What the fuck is wrong with you, Veronica?
What the fuck is wrong with you?
Nothing? It's a legitimate question. I'm assuming most of your audience are female, adult, probably between 25 and 45, American, and mothers. So yeah, it's a very normal fucking question. So why are you so defensive, girl?
They can't give consent. In my state, age of consent is 17. Like, they can't get a tattoo. They can't buy a house. They can't buy a car. Or like, what business do they have doing adult activities when they're children?
Let's talk about consent. You're correct. The age of consent for sexual intercourse is 17 in your state. But the age of consent for other things varies, Veronica. It varies. For example, the medical age of consent is 18 in New York, with several written exceptions under the statutory law. For example, a pregnant minor can consent to medical services related to their prenatal care, and they can also give consent to medical treatments given to their child, something that you hopefully knew when you were pregnant at 14. Although I have no idea what you knew because it seems like your parents did a shit job at preparing you.
Now listen, some parents may disagree and they may be like, you know what, 12, 13, 14, 15, that's old enough, that's fine. And you know what? Those parents can give their consent for their child to do the things that cause pregnancy, and they can get their child on birth control. But you know what?
No, they can't. Parents cannot give sexual consent on behalf of their fucking children, Veronica, because that's called fucking trafficking. Oh my God. Let's just take a minute to talk about consent laws. Because usually when we talk about the age of consent for sex, it's to protect minors from being preyed upon by fucking adults. Like, I don't know, the guy who was like 18 or 22, depending on which version of your backstory you're telling, who was dating 14-year-old you and got you pregnant. Which, by the way, if he was over the age of 18, is second-degree statutory rape in your state. So no, not only could your parents not consent to that, you can't consent to that. Because that's how child abuse, child porn, and trafficking occurs. It's illegal for a fucking reason. Now, it's different. It is super different when both parties are under that age of consent. Then it's not considered statutory rape. Also, those minors don't need permission to have sex, let alone parental consent.
Birth control is not 100% effective.
Nope, it's not. But do you know what is also not 100% effective? Abstinence. Let's look at the stats for birth control, shall we? This is from HealthLink, British Columbia. Now, before we go over this chart, Veronica, I want you to look at the two columns on the right. The first is number of unplanned pregnancies out of 100 typical users, and the second column is number of unplanned pregnancies out of 100 people that use the method exactly as directed. Both columns are citing data from separate peer-reviewed sources. Between the two, I think we can infer a general idea of effectiveness, yeah? So, combination birth control pills, 91% effective. Hormonal implants, 99% effective. The shot, 94% effective. Transdermal patch, 91% effective. Progestin-only pills, aka mini pills, 91% effective. The vaginal ring, 91% effective. Hormonal IUD, 99% effective. Copper IUD, 99% effective. Male condoms, 82% effective. The withdrawal or pull-out method, 78% effective. Female condoms, 78% effective. Now we're going to skip over a bunch of this other stuff and we're just going to jump right down to periodic abstinence and fertility awareness methods, 76% effective. So in other words, your method, Veronica, is actually the least effective method of preventing unplanned pregnancies. Oh, and just in case you're curious, according to this 2017 report, the rate of teen pregnancy in your state was 33.2%, although that number could be higher or lower depending on where in the state you live. So yeah, mostly effective contraception is better than no contraception. Full stop. But go on.
And it comes with major risks. And not just the risks everyone knows about, like weight gain, but it can also cause heart attack, stroke, blood clots, and the longer you're on it, your chance of getting cancer skyrockets.
Okay, let's talk about the risks. Because a lot of medications have the potential for severely, but usually rare side effects, right? Like, all things have risk. Everything. Water has a risk to it. So, for example, I take Vyvanse for my ADHD, which puts me at risk for heart attack, stroke, and high blood pressure. As for those serious side effects when it comes to birth control, they tend to be determined by A, the type of birth control you're using, B, your age, and C, your physical health. most of which stem from combined hormonal contraception. Those blood clots you're so worried about are really only a concern if you're over the age of 35 and you smoke. If you're in good health, however, you can use hormonal contraception all the way until menopause with fairly minimal problems. Now, I'm assuming that this is the source that you're citing for cancer risk, and I find it super unsurprising that you've cherry-picked information from it, because of course you have. You need to be right and justified in your position. So let's get into the actual cancer risks associated with hormonal contraception, because there are many different types of birth control, Veronica, like condoms and spermicide and vaginal sponges, for example. So yes, according to a 2017 Danish study, women who were using or had recently stopped using oral combined hormone contraceptives had a modest, about 20%, increase in the relative risk of breast cancer compared with women who had never used oral contraceptives. The risk increase varied from 0 to 60%, depending on the specific type of oral combined hormone contraceptive. The risk of breast cancer also increased the longer oral contraceptives were used. However, the risk of cancer depends on the type of cancer. For example, for cervical cancer, they found that women who have used oral contraceptives for 5 or more years have a higher risk than women who have never used oral contraceptives. And like breast cancer, they found that the longer a woman uses them, the greater the increase in that risk. But for endometrial cancer, they actually found that women who have ever used an oral contraceptive actually have a lower risk than women who have never ever used them. Taking oral contraceptives actually reduced the chances of contracting endometrial cancer by 30%, with greater risk reduction while taking them, as they found that oral contraceptives may suppress endometrial cell proliferation, which leads to endometrial cancer. Similarly, for ovarian cancer, women who have ever used oral contraceptives also have a 30 to 50% lower risk than women who have never fucking used it. Again, with the protection increasing with longer use, as by reducing the number of ovulations a woman experiences over the course of her lifetime, it reduces the exposure she would experience to naturally occurring female hormones, which can lead to ovarian cancer. Hormones are what trigger this. Finally, for colorectal cancer, they concluded that oral contraceptive use is associated with a 15 to 20% lower risk, as oral contraceptives could lower the level of bile acids in the blood for women, which can lead to colorectal cancer. So you're right. They can cause cancer, but you're also wrong. They can actually reduce the risk of cancer in the same turn. In other words, like everything in this life, there are going to be pros and cons. It's a coin toss, baby.
So why would I do that to a child who's not even engaging in reproductive activities? Like, that doesn't even make any sense.
Ideally, you wouldn't, unless your family doctor felt that hormonal birth control was important for their physical health, as birth control isn't just used to prevent pregnancy. In fact, it can help manage premenstrual syndrome, aka PMS. It can help reduce the severity of symptoms related to endometriosis, which means less physical pain during menstruation. It can reduce anemia if you have a heavy blood flow. I have a heavy blood flow, so let me tell you. It can offer some cancer protections, as we just discussed. It can shield against pelvic inflammatory disease, which is a sexually transmitted infection, so probably not relevant to your kids, but still good to know. It can help with polycystic ovary syndrome. A study found that it can provide additional protection against the flu. It can reduce migraines related to menstruation and ease painful period cramps. So, if one of your period-having daughters is having problems with their menstrual cycle, birth control is something that could be used to help manage those symptoms. And there's nothing wrong with that.
So no, I will not be getting my minor children on birth control. Like, that's ridiculous. There's no need for that.
According to you, fortunately, they don't need your consent or your approval to get contraceptives. And I also want to add that women's health in general is just shit. And just the education around menstruation and reproductive health issues is severely lacking. There are a lot of women out there who experience painful periods and have been led to believe, either through a lack of information, a lack of education, being dismissed by medical practitioners, and just general gaslighting by everyone around them, that their symptoms are normal and they're overreacting, when in fact, they're not. So I truly hope that at the very least, you, Veronica, are talking with your daughters about this, and that if they do have issues related to their reproductive health, that you are actually taking steps to help them by speaking to your doctor and, just exploring it. Because just because they aren't saying anything doesn't mean it isn't a problem, Okay, that's enough of the TikTok. Let's move on to the video caption, as it actually provides a little bit more context to this Mad Mama's stance on abstinence. She writes, "I'm not judging the parents who know their own child and feel it's appropriate for them." Cool, that's totally fair. But again, it doesn't matter what you feel is appropriate. If your underage children want contraceptives like hormonal birth control, they don't need your fucking permission to get it. And you absolutely should not be standing in their way from getting it. I'm just stating my family's beliefs on the matter. Again, totally fair. However, is it really your family's beliefs, or is it just your beliefs? Just curious. Because when I was a teen, I had formulated a lot of my own opinions separate to what my parents believe. Just saying. There's nothing wrong with abstinence. Sure, absolutely. There is nothing wrong with abstaining from having sex. It's the only guaranteed method to prevent pregnancy. No, not according to that government website that is citing peer-reviewed sources. It's actually only 76% effective. So, do you know why? Do you want to know why, Veronica? Because abstinence doesn't prevent pregnancy from things like, SA. Just a thought. My teens all agree with waiting. Sure, Jan. To give themselves time to decide who they are and what they want. You know what? That's great. I'm really glad to hear that your teen children are taking their reproductive health seriously and recognize the huge responsibility that comes with pregnancy. It's just too bad that you don't treat pregnancy with the same degree of seriousness. Just saying. And I know they're not doing it behind my back. How? How do you know, Veronica? Are you reading their diaries? Are you snooping through their phones, their emails, their social media, and just the internet browser history? How do you know? Because there's lots of shit that I did as a teenager that my parents still have no idea about. So, side eye. I'm pressing X to doubt. They're not waiting because I said so. Are you sure? Because this would be a really great opportunity to talk about the kind of relationship, love, and trust that you have with your children that would help support and explain your argument. Especially because I grew up living in fear of my dad, and I'm just saying that fear can often look a lot like compliance. So if your kids are afraid of you knowing that they're doing this, of course they're not gonna fucking tell you. Of course they're gonna make sure it looks like they're complying with your wishes, They're waiting because they want to be ready first. Okay, and that is super great to hear. But what does that mean? What does waiting until you're ready mean in your family, other than you're not allowed to be ready before the age of 17 because I said so? Because in your now deleted 5-part series, 11 times you thought you were in a position to take on another child with seemingly cavalier abandon. You felt you were ready for another baby, even when a lot of people in your situation wouldn't have. So I'm going to need you to define what being ready to have a child actually means to the audience. Anyway, I'm going to cut it off here, and we'll come back to this with part 2's dramatic reading of the comment section, because I love it so much. It's so ridiculous. Oh my God. Anyway, thank you so much to everyone who has liked, commented, and subscribed. As always, I appreciate you all, and I'll catch you in the next one real soon. Promise. Bye!
Guys,
What are you doing?
I'm making a video.